Brewing Inc. is now syndicated on SeriousWriter.com. See them at SeriousWriter.com for resources, articles, videos, topical classes, and now a podcast, the Brewing Inc. podcast, because we're syndicated on SeriousWriter.com.
All right, well, welcome to another episode of Interbrews on the Brew Inc. podcast. And we're just going to jump right into it. I have with me today Cody Morehead. How you doing, Cody?
I'm doing great. How about you, man?
I'm doing pretty well, man. It's been a busy couple weeks, as I'm sure you totally understand. But it's been a really great couple weeks. A lot of open doors, a lot of great times. We had an opportunity to be a part of the local Gwinnett County Library fundraising gala, and they had us come in and do like a lot of press for that as the podcast. So that was just amazing. And how about you?
Good, man. Good. We just wrapped up the Ohio Christian Writers Conference, so that was great. We had a good time. Got to connect with some great writers and got to hear some good keynotes, and so I got to perform and speak. It was fun.
Yeah. Did you get to do any Journey this time? Was there a Journey this time? What did you sing this time?
No. Yeah. So actually, I did Elton John. So I won't spoil it for you. But Saturday night's all right for writing. Let's just say that. And so yeah, now I got to do our theme last year for our Serious Writer conferences and tours was Journey, and this year it's Brave. And so we get to start talking about all sorts of things. Why you need courage to be a writer. So yeah.
Yeah, you really do. We had this conversation on our podcast this past week that posted on Wednesday, where we talked about the fact that I seem to have gotten involved in career paths where I find rejection a lot. Whether that's selling coffee, whether that's writing, And so we just talked about how to make that rejection part of the journey, how to make that rejection part of not to be afraid of it, to really kind of make that part of the journey in the sense of help it make you get better, improve, progress, move forward. So I agree. Bravery is a big part of that. I think courage and bravery are a big part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. We like to tell writers all the time, like it's okay, like that phrase that keeps getting tossed around. It's okay to not be okay, right? It's okay to not get it, but you have to take the first step, and having that bravery and being able to say, like, I'm willing to pen, what really has like been put on my heart and to share. That's really, really important. So yeah,
I totally agree. It's always about taking that next step. I actually saw a good interview with Tyler Perry recently, the filmmaker guy, and he kind of talked about that, about he started small. He started with what he had, and now he's huge, and he's got this big studio space and land outside of Atlanta here, and just how huge he's gotten. But he was like, I didn't get there overnight. It took years of little steps along the way. And so I think you're right. Just take that. That's that courage of that next step. I think it's great.
Absolutely.
So how did you get involved with the Serious Writer crew?
Oh, man. Okay, so, a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now, my wife and I went to our first writers conference. And my wife is really the bigger writer than I am. I'm more of a speaker performer, so I kind of get asked to go all over the place to do that stuff. She gets asked to go all over the place as a literary agent for Heartline. And so she went and she was like, I'm going to go to this writers conference. So we went to Blue Ridge Writers Conference in North Carolina, Blue Ridge Mountains. And so we went there, and I was like, I'm going to take this opportunity to sign up for as many appointments as I can and just get to know people in the industry, because I'm just a natural networker. So I'm like, I really didn't, I mean, this is terrible, but like I didn't even go to like keynotes or like workshops. I just met with people. Like I met with agents and publishing houses and like CBN and like Todd Starnes. And like, so I spent my whole time there just like building this like network of people. And Kyle Young, who is a literary agent and a good friend of mine, like we've known each other for years. So he was the one that kind of goaded me into going to this conference. And so he pointed this lady out, and he's like, "You need to go talk to her. She would be like, you would love, like you and her would get along great." And he was pointing to Bethany Jett. And so Bethany Jett and I sat down, and she wrote the Cinderella Rule. She's done all this other stuff. She's a podcast, like she did video blogs and like all this other stuff. So like we sat down, we hit it off right off the bat. Like we were just talking about all sorts of stuff. And we just connected. And so we got done with Blue Ridge, and I get a text from Kyle like, "Hey, we want to have a Skype with you. Bethany Jett and I want to have a Skype with you." And I'm like, "Okay, great." And he's like, so we get on the Skype, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to be creative director for Serious Writer?" So, because I'm a graphic design guy, visual media and so on and so forth. And I was like, "Okay, what's Serious Writer?" And so we started kind of hashing this out, and almost 2 years later, we're going strong, and we've started all these conferences and tours, and it's been a blast, man. It's just been a wild ride, just kind of holding on for dear life. So.
Yeah, well, we had a great conversation, or I had a great conversation with Bethany and Michelle, a month ago or so when they were here. And you're right, just meeting people, connecting, networking, it really does encourage you, but it also just helps you to know what's out there in such a way that, I don't know how else to explain it. Like there's examples of people kind of a step or two. We're talking about the next step, right? Like there's people who've taken those next steps, and there's such great encouragement to say, "Oh, come on, you can do it." And that's just, I agree. Those conferences are great. And we've talked about how great the Serious Writer conferences are so much on this podcast, but also, Realm Makers was great in the same sort of way.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of these conferences do that. And so that's why I always encourage people to go. And I try to goad people. I'm not as good at it maybe as Kyle is, but I try to goad people into it.
Yeah. He basically just said, like, "You're going to this conference, like, whether you like it or not." And I'm like, I don't, like, at the time, I'm like, I'd written like 1 or 2 blogs, and I'm like, I don't really want to go to this. I'm not a writer. Why do I need to be here? And he's like, "Just trust me." Like, because I'd been getting asked to speak at like the Ohio Youth Circuit and some of this other stuff, and so he's like, "It'll help your speaking career." I'm like, "Okay, sure." Like, how's writing going to help? And then I got there, and it was like a no-brainer. It's just, and you're right. Like, being in a conference environment is so much different because everybody is there for a common goal and a common purpose, to connect with each other and to connect with the material at hand. And so it creates this kind of, for lack of a better word, this petri dish of people, right? And, so that, they all kind of grow together and figure these things out, and, lasting relationships come out of these writers' conferences.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Yeah, I felt like with every one of the conferences that I've been to, which is really only a handful over the past few years, but with every one, both secular and Christian, I feel like I came away with, like you said, another step. Like, okay, this is my next step. This is where I'm going. This is what I'm doing.
Yep.
So how long have you been doing stuff with like art direction and graphics and that kind of stuff?
Well, I probably for the past 5 or 6 years, I've been working with graphic design and visual marketing. I got really interested in it at a church that I was working at, where we just really didn't have anybody that was doing it, and so we were at this big giant church, and so I was like, well, I'm willing to learn something new, and so I started just toying around with Photoshop, and I just kind of caught the bug. And it went from like, oh, I kind of like this, to, man, this is a big part of what I do and who I am, and being able to, kind of help. And then the branding side came along. I got to talk to some people at Cox Media, which is this big media group that helps with, Fox and ABC and CBS and NBC and all these companies. They help them, with the way that they, market their channels. And so they're a TV marketing company. So, and they did some radio stuff, and I get to meet with some of their marketing directors and talk through, some processes, and got to sit down with them and said, well, what do you think about this? And he was like, oh, we like this. And I was like, okay, like, And from there, starting Zoo Creative, which is my company, which is branding and marketing, and get to help people with their websites and their personal brands and churches and 501c3 nonprofits, and so it's great. It's been great.
Yeah. So when you talk about branding, like what kind of stuff does that entail? Just so, because I think some people, I mean, I'm enough in marketing to know that I don't know that I fully knew what it was until I started learning about it.
Yeah.
So what would you say branding is?
Yeah. So what we try to say is that branding is the image that people see that you craft, right? So, and if you think about Mr. T, right? Do you know what the T stands for?
I don't remember.
Nobody does.
Yeah, right.
Like nobody does. I looked it up. Like nobody does. It's just Mr. T, because and all you knew was that he had 15 pounds of gold chains around his neck, and he played it full, right? That was his brand, right? It's the image that he crafted so that people could see what he was about, right? And it was consistent and it stuck. So that's kind of how we look at branding. So
because I think a lot of people like myself, before I started learning about some of that, we would have thought that's a logo. Like it's just a logo. Branding is a logo. And that's not really what we're talking about. It might include some of that, but it's got logos, you've got images, you've got color schemes, you've got all, like you're saying, all of those kind of images that help tell the story of who you are. And do it in such a simple way that it's kind of like a 5-second, you get it when you see the branding, you know?
Absolutely.
What do you think, what are some of the things, like maybe one or two things that you took away from your experience with Cox? Because honestly, that's a pretty huge company, man. They're massive. Yeah. So what are a couple big things that you felt like you learned by hanging out with them and dealing with them? Yeah.
And the biggest things were for companies, the businesses, marketing strategy is much different than for individuals and like nonprofits, but there's some really similar threads. And so the three things that the three things, and they call them something different, and I'm pretty sure they're trademarks, so I won't say them, but I'll tell you what Pubzu calls them, are the me, the mission, and the vision, right? And so how we define me, mission, and vision, and there's some people who mission and vision, they're different and how they define it. But for us, me, mission, and vision are really simple. The me is who are you? The mission is what are you trying to accomplish? And the vision is how are you going to accomplish it? And so as a brand, having those three things in mind, those are the biggest things, the biggest questions that they ask is, okay, what is this all about? If they're marketing a program on television, it's like, okay, what is this about? What is the goal? What is the target demographic? How are we going to reach, so on and so forth? And then the last one, the vision, is like, okay, how are we going to get there? And so, if you look at Disney's vision statement or mission statement, if you look at, everybody knows Disney's brand, right? Or Nike, their brand, I tell people all the time, like, if you got a job right out of college working at Nike in Oregon, why do you think people would immediately know that you made it? Right? Like, because Nike has spent all this time with their brand, and it is the elite, right? And that's what they've done. So when you look at these companies, nothing that they've done has been on accident, right? Like, this is all intentional. Like, the way that you feel about Disney is intentional. Like, the way you feel about Nike, it's intentional. And so when you talk about like branding, that's what I really pulled from that time getting to spend with the marketing directors. Is like, the companies that are doing things well in marketing are doing them on purpose. And that's really important, because a lot of times sometimes we think if we get a cool logo and a cool color scheme and some graphics on our social media, we're killing it. But it's so much bigger than that. Yeah.
That's really good. And so do you also do other kind of art stuff, like book covers? Like, do you do all those kind of things as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I do book covers, and we do the biggest thing that our company gets asked to do is websites, just because, especially for authors, as authors and writers, that's a big thing, and people don't realize that. But the website is the new storefront. It just really is. And if you don't have a clear, concise message on your website, you're probably losing customers and clients that you thought you were getting, because it's just that website is so vital to the flow of what people know about you. And so we do book covers, we do illustration, we do web design, we do logo and emblem making. And one thing that we really stress, and really is part of our process, is what we felt like, that we really want to have the personal touch. Like, there's a lot of websites and brands out there, like, marketing companies out there, like TaylorMade brands or, Fiverr. They're great. They get you a logo real quick for like $5, but they really don't know you, and they really don't know what you're all about. And like, the truth is, about 70% of people who are starting in the industry right now and writing, they don't know what they're about either. Right. And we know this from trends, not just trends with the writing world, but trends within the educational world, that people just don't know who they are. And, like we were talking about before we started, this self-awareness, like, that's why it's so important, because people are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on education that actually isn't suited for their gifting and their ability, but because they don't really know who they are, and with authors, it's the same. Authors spend all this time and money and investment at writing these things that sometimes really they're not the best at, because either they haven't listened to somebody's critiques or direction, or they just want to do what they want to do. And so we spend a lot of time trying to get to the heart of that. Like, who what are your passions? Where's your heart at? What are you good at? And now from there, what can we do to help you brand yourself and, your business, your company, in a way that, really gets to the heart of what you're all about?
I think you're right. I think that's so important about everybody. Like you're saying, writers, even companies, for us as a coffee company, we have to, we've kind of gone through the last year, or I have, talking about some of those things. I've gone through some of these marketing, learning things, and realizing, man, we haven't communicated simply and effectively who we are and why and what we're about. And it has to, and in the world that we live in, it has to be, people don't have the margin to do it over an hour, right? They're looking on a Facebook page, or they're looking on a website, like you're saying. We called it the 5-second grunt test. Like when they open up your website, they should know within 2 to 3, 5 seconds who you are, what you do, and why. And if they don't know that, then you're right. You're probably losing customers. You're probably losing people who don't really understand. And I think for authors, for the purpose of this interview, for authors, it is something that they should take time really exploring. Who am I? What do I want to do? And why? What's my passion? And for me, I know that big turn came when there was a book I read about, I think it's called 21st Century Fiction. I think it was Donald Moss from the Moss Agency or whatever. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but anyway, but he basically was talking about write what scares you. Basically, that was his thing. Like the one thing that you really want to do, but you think no one is ever going to like or whatever, like he was like, just tackle, because if it scares you, it probably scares other people too. And they'll connect and he just kind of went through that. And that really helped me as I was, because I was kind of thought I was torn between these two worlds of doing fiction and doing, I wanted to do really gritty, violent fiction, but I also wanted it to have a redemptive story behind it as well. And just, I didn't know how that was going to fit in marketplaces and all that kind of stuff. And, but you're right. Once you figure out, okay, well, this is who I am. You know what I mean? Like, yes, there's going to be, and now you know how to express it. Now you know how to say it. Now you can think about ways to brand it, which is more than like you're saying, more than a logo. It's the whole system of what you're doing. What are some other things that when you deal with authors, you feel like they haven't really thought of, or they haven't really explored as much when they start getting into writing or start putting themselves out there?
Yeah. I think, well, honestly, a culture of current. I talk about culture of current a lot when I go to conferences, is just this idea of how do I know what's actually happening in the world, right? Because a lot of times I think what happens is we're jaded by social media, so we don't invest the time that we need to in it to understand what's happening in culture, and so I think what happens is we get complacent about what we know, right? And it's like, oh well, I'm just going to watch Fox, or I'm just going to watch CNN, or I'm just going to watch BBC America, or like that's how I'm going to get my news. But the truth is, by the time you're receiving that news, it's already outdated. And especially for millennials and Generation Z, it's way outdated by about 6 hours, right? Because when does the news come on, right? You have your 7 o'clock news, you have your 10 o'clock news, right? You have your 5 o'clock news, right? And you have these snippets of news. Well, they're happening most times 6 or 7 hours after the actual incident. When on Facebook, it's already been up for 6 or 7 hours. Or on Snapchat, it's already been up for, 6 or 7 hours. It happened right after. Instagram's the same way. So I think that's a thing that authors really need to have their finger on the pulse of, because as you watch these things and you watch these trends, like you start to understand this is why my book's not selling, or this is why, this is what I need to do to tweak, my method of, my method of getting my book out there, or how I'm marketing it to people. And like knowing those things is vital, because when you don't know those things, you're not effective in the culture that you're trying to sell to. So in businesses, like the best businesses, they know that, and so they're constantly up on it. And one thing I tell people all the time is like, Snapchat's scary, especially for like old people like us. Like Snapchat's scary, but if you don't at least know how Snapchat works, you're missing out, because about 40 to 50% of app developers are basing their algorithms and their engineering mechanics in their apps off of Snapchat, and the swiping and the way that Snapchat, the way that you click to save and all these other things, they're basing the way that they set up their apps on Snapchat and the way that Snapchat works. And so it's it's the fastest growing social media by far.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't do a whole lot on Snapchat yet. I'm trying to learn a little bit more how to be effective on Instagram. Bethany's been helping me. Bethany laughed at me when we were talking. She was like, your account on Instagram looks like a fake account. You have, because I had so little. I was like, well, I'm going to have to work on that. So, but yeah, that's interesting about Snapchat. What about for a website? So when an author, what are the kind of things an author would need on a website? What are some things when you put together a website, you think, okay, you're talking about a storefront. What kind of things do they need? Okay.
So the first thing is a professional headshot. I cannot tell you how many authors are out there right now that are using outdated, their headshots from, or selfies, or like pictures that they took 17 years ago that look nothing like them now. And I know this sounds extreme, but like everybody in the world right now, if they have an iPhone 8 or an iPhone 7 or an iPhone X, they can take a portrait style, beautiful headshot photo, get dressed up, go outside and get a nice photo of yourself, like not a selfie, right? Like, and that's the truth. Like it used to be like I have to spend $1,500 on a session, or like $700 to get a couple of headshots. Like if you got an iPhone, have somebody go take a portrait mode picture of you and airdrop it to your computer or whatever you're doing. Like I know that seems like foreign tech for some people, but like everybody has the ability to get a nice headshot. And if you don't have a nice headshot, the first thing people think on your website, if you don't have a nice headshot, is that what you're doing is outdated. Like that's just the truth. Because what they want to know is especially if you have an outdated photo or your hairstyle has changed or so on and so forth, they want to see a current picture of you. And if they don't, they kind of think immediately that you're out of date. The other thing is we call it the Z or F test, okay, on a website. And the Z or F test is when you're looking at a website, people's eyes are going to naturally move in a Z or an F. Okay. And so they're going to roll across the top bar. They're going to go down through the middle, and then they're going to follow the bottom bar. And that's without scrolling. Right. So if on the first page that they see, they don't know what you're about, they've probably tuned out. Google released a study, 2016, or I'm sorry, late 2017. They released a study about the human being's attention span, right? And a goldfish has about 7 seconds, right? Like that's what we know that a goldfish has between 8 and 10 seconds, like, retention, like that they can keep their attention, right? Well, a human being has between 5 and 7. So, like if in 5 to 7 seconds, you don't have somebody's attention and you haven't grabbed it, like that means that you've lost. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to have people that stick around that defy that, but like you've got to set it up not for the people who are going to stick around. It's for the people who you're catching off guard, who visited your website because they're trying to figure out what you do. So, but yeah. So I would say those are two of the biggest things, Yeah,
I think that's really interesting because a lot of times you hear you need a blog or you need a this or you need a that, right? And so, you're talking about the first visual kind of image that you're portraying that tells, especially people like you're saying, millennials, generation, what would you call them, Z? Generation Z.
Yeah, Generation Z. Yeah.
Especially millennials and younger, whether they think it consciously or not, they're making a judgment of, oh, this isn't current or this is current or this is whatever, just based on that first few seconds that they look at something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what about book covers? What are some things that you found with book covers that you kind of have to walk through with authors? Because maybe an author will give you an idea and you might think, oh, that's just not going to work or whatever. Like, what are some things that you work on with authors?
So one thing that we try to do, and we try to do it in a kind way, because like everybody has ideas, and they, inherently everybody thinks their idea is the best, whether we want to agree with that or not. Like when you go into a meeting and you want to share your opinion, you're not sharing it because you're like, oh, this is wrong. Like you're sharing it because you believe that what you're saying has validity and it's right. And so one thing that we try to do is be really kind with authors about their book covers, but we do a lot of research. Like we are looking to see what is on the shelves that is like what you're writing and what's selling. And we're cross-referencing the covers, right? Because the truth is there are some excellent designers out there right now that are making beautiful covers, right? And if your book looks any outdated at all on the cover, it is going to get passed up. And that's just the truth. Go to Barnes & Noble and look at the books that they have on display. Go to a bookstore and look at the books that are set out on their table, like their prime table, right? They're the most visually appealing books, and there's a reason they're out on the table, because that's what Barnes & Noble wants, because their brand is affected by whether or not your book cover looks good as well, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you want a book to make it, like make sure that you do the cover. Here's the other hard truth that I try and tell authors in a nice way, right? Like less than 1% of authors can actually successfully design their own book covers. Like, so you're when you get to the point where you're published or you're self-publishing or whatever, like, most publishing houses have a designer in house that they're going to work to design your book, right? Unless you make it part of your contract or whatever. But, if you're designing your own book and self-publishing, pay somebody. Right? It's the investment that you want to make. And I'm not saying pay us, because, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying you want to pay somebody. You need to pay a designer to do your book cover, because if you think that you can put your book cover together, you are probably not the 99%. You're probably not the 1%. You're probably the 99%. Right. And so, and just being able to go that extra mile and say, like, I took all this time, like you spent all that time writing this book, you blood, sweat, and tears, literally. Right. And so don't ruin its ability to sell on the shelves by thinking that you can do it all yourself. Realize that you're going to have to take that next step. So.
Yeah, that was something that, I had to bite the bullet on, and it's been a few years. So as you're talking, and I've even had this thought recently, I might need to update my covers. People do that from time to time, where it's been a few years and the market changes and you might have to look at those. And I mean, it happens all the time. They put out a reissue of Narnia and the cover looks all different, because the market's changing. They want to be current. They want to look current.
Exactly. And when the movies came out, what did they do? You remember this?
Yeah.
What happened when the movies came out? the cover, I mean, this is for all movies. When a book gets re-released as a movie, what do? They make the cover art match the movie, right?
Yep.
And the movie posters and so on and so forth, because marketing people know, like, that's how they're going to move units, because people buy into the hype, right? Like, I love studying all sorts of different people when it comes to marketing. And because I think marketing is all about storytelling, right? Mm-hmm. Like a good marketer is a good storyteller, right? And so I just talked to Stephen James about this, actually. So like a good marketer is a good storyteller. So if you look at some of the best storytellers throughout history, you look at Spielberg, right? What did Spielberg know about Jaws, right? That stupid mechanical Jaws did not work for 80% of that movie. And so you see the shark less than you see like anything else in the movie. Yep. Like I'm pretty sure you see the dog on the shore longer than you see the shark in the movie, right? Like, so what did he have to do? He had to create the suspense, right? And so like good, and Alfred Hitchcock said which I always loved, this quote from Alfred Hitchcock, one of the best suspense thriller, movie directors, playwrights ever, says the fear is not in the bang, but in the anticipation of, right. And so what, that's one thing, as you're looking at like cover design and how you're going to brand yourself, like there's something to be said for the what's not there as well, and the mystery of it, and what can you do to employ good storytelling, to get what you're saying out there. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So what are some ways that people can kind of get a hold of you? So I know you talked about your art company. It's called, and I know, what's the website for that?
Okay, so realpubzoo.com. It's just realpubzoo.com. It's PUBZOO.com. And so that's our company. I'm at CodyMorehead.com. So that's where people book me through, my speaking agent, or, and where I get asked to go to conferences and speak. So, and I'm on pretty much every social media. So I'm not active on Twitter. One thing I think was that I just don't utilize Twitter the way that I should. So I just kind of stopped putting effort into it, but it's still there. It's still active. But so yeah, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. I'm all there. So
now,
the best ways to get hold of me.
We haven't talked about this as much, but you also have written a couple books, right? Are those on your website?
I have not.
Oh, you have not? I have
not written any books yet. No, I've written some blogs, and I've written some periodicals, and I've been published in some websites, and but I have not written any books yet. So
are there any in the works?
Yeah, actually there is. I'm writing a book right now. I'm hoping that I can keep the title the way it is, but it's How to Succeed at Life When You Suck at It. So, because so that's pretty much the story of my life. Like I'm not this like exceptional person, and if I should be like the underdog's champion, man, because like I'm not like some exceptional person. I just keep having these opportunities like opened up for me in life, and I have good people around me, and I'm meticulous about finding good people to be around me and help hold me accountable to like the standard of life that I want. Like, and even like it's so painful because I'm not like this super skilled, amazing person. Like I just have great people around me, and like they make me look really good. So like that's that's like chapters 1 through 7. It's just all about making your team, like building your team. So, yeah.
And chapter 8 is just you keep your head down, right? Or just exactly. just do what they say.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Because I got this big. I mean, I know, like, I got this big personality. Like, I go to conferences and I act all crazy and stuff, and so like I know like and this is I tell people all the time, like like the greatest gift you've ever been given is you. Like, I really believe that. As you talk with people about how trying to figure out their brand and so on and so forth. I mean, that's the first place I start is who are you? Like what is it that you've been given in your life as a gift that nobody else has? And like, how can you utilize that to better be you, like, and I think that's the most essential thing in writing and understanding who you are.
Well, it's one of those things that I've commented on before, like writing and art in general. it's a very interesting thing to me that we always want to know who made it. Like when we really enjoy something, we want to know who did that. Like
absolutely,
whatever it might be, you know?
Yeah.
And I think there's a spiritual reason for that. I think we're designed to want to know what's behind the creation, right? We're inspired to know what's behind this, and we're curious, and that's why they put the guy's picture on the back cover and tell you about the author.
Exactly.
Like why we learn about Hemingway and how his life and all that kind of stuff. Like we're interested in those things. And so you're right. I think making you as much a part of the the brand. Who are you? And that's why the self-awareness is such a big part of what you were talking about earlier. So you've been involved in a lot of this author stuff as far as the art direction and the websites. What do you like to read? I should have asked this question earlier.
So I'll be honest. I'm not like I like to read fiction every once in a while, but what really gets me going is like the nonfiction, like personal memoir, like leadership style stuff. That's what really excites me. And one thing that I think really is like beneficial for me as a marketer is leadership trends are marketing trends. Like, and anybody that tells me different has not read any marketing book, because I could literally find a marketing book and a leadership book and just cross reference all their points. Like every form of leadership is just a good form of marketing, because, when you boil it down, being a leader is about knowing who you are. It's about building a team to help you get better. And it's about putting things together in such a way that help people understand what you're trying to do. Right. And like, that's marketing. Like marketing is figuring out who you are, figuring out how to do it better, and reaching the people that you're supposed to reach in the most effective way possible. And so, when you look at like the way leadership affects how we do things, like good leaders know the current trends. Good leaders know what's coming in culture, and good leaders presuppose what's going to happen next and try to make predictive adjustments to help catch up with that, and like, in my company, we're already talking about, what's the next step? What's the next thing for us? Like, what are we not doing now that we need to do better? And how is the market changing going to affect how we can accomplish these things? And so like, I think those walk hand in hand. So.
Well, that is really interesting, because I've never thought about it like that, but it totally makes sense, because a good leader, and not in a salesman, creepy kind of way, but a good leader is trying to get people to buy into a vision and a mission, right? Yep. That's what a good leader is trying to do. A good leader isn't just – there's a difference between a leader and a manager. And this is something I've told people. Like, just because someone's a leader, like we think, oh, well, they just tell people what to do. No, a good leader doesn't tell people what to do. A good leader, that's a manager. Right, that's a manager at Chick-fil-A or whoever. Absolutely. But the leader tries to get people to buy into the vision, and then they're self-motivated. That's leadership. And so you're right that there's got to be some of those cross pollination between marketing, because good marketing is, like you're saying, is telling a story, getting people to buy in. Apple gets people to pay more than Windows.
Exactly.
Because they've got people that buy into their vision, which is, do you want to be an artist? Do you want to be, they've got the brand, they've got the vision, and their marketing gets people to buy into what they're about. So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we try to constantly be having that question, like, and that's where I think that's where leadership strategies come in. Like, what's that next thing? What's the thing that we need to work on more? What's that thing that we need to be better at? And a good marketer is doing all those things. They're asking those questions about culture. They're asking, what am I missing? Like, what am I not hitting right now? And how am I getting people, to buy into? Not because honestly, like as an author, especially, like you're not asking people to buy your book. You're asking people to buy you. Like, they really are. You're asking somebody to buy into who you are and to keep tuning in. And that's why publishing companies are so much about platform building, and making sure your numbers are up, because those units, those people they're not there to just buy your product. They're to buy into who you are. So.
Well, and it goes into something we were talking about before we recorded too, about listening, how important listening is, because when you're talking good marketers, and I think we talked about this with Bethany and Michelle as well, good marketers are listening to the questions people are asking. What are people really wanting the answers for? And they're solving problems, right? Good marketing is solving a problem. It's solving someone's problem of, this is an issue and I want to get it resolved, whether it's a better zipper on your pants or whether it's a better rocket into space, whatever you're trying to sell, you're trying to show people this has value because it's solving a problem. And so you're right. Marketing, good marketers listen. And it's another thing I've been trying to learn as well. Because that's constantly changing, and that's why you have to keep your finger on the pulse kind of idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, hey man, this was a great conversation, and I know that a lot of times when we think of writing interviews and interviewing stuff for authors, a lot of times people don't like to talk about marketing, but like you're saying, it's got to be part of what we do as authors now. We can't get away from it. Just the way the culture is, the way media is, the way the industry is. You can just write for you, and that's great. But if you want to get anywhere, you have to understand these things about marketing and take those steps to move forward. So I think this has been a really valuable conversation. I really appreciate it.
Well, good. I'm glad.
And so let's go over just real quickly again, realpubzoo.com, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, realpubzoo.com.
PUB. Of course, this will be on all the thing. Is there a Real Pub Zoo Facebook?
Yes, there is.
Okay, awesome.
So it's just Pub Zoo Creative.
Pub Zoo Creative. So, and of course, CodyMorehead.com, and then I know you're on Instagram and Facebook. I'm friends with you on all that stuff.
Yep, absolutely.
So, well, hey, man, I really appreciate this. This is great.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on.
No problem. And we'll talk soon, I'm sure.
All right. Sounds great, man.